Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Who is enemy number one of regional parties? And when I'm talking about regional parties, I'm also including those parties which are technically national parties, like Trinamool Congress, NCP, they're national parties, but they have their base limited to one particular state, and so I'm clubbing them all as regional parties, not going by the technical definition. So who is their enemy number one? On the face of it, you would say the BJP, because BJP has been a marauding force. We have seen how the BJP has made forays in so many states held by regional parties, West Bengal being the latest example, although it did not come to power in West Bengal, but it has become a major force to reckon with. So now when you look at it, you would think that regional parties would be treating the BJP as the enemy number one, targeting them, and that's why you have seen all the efforts by these parties to come together to take on the BJP. And in their public pronouncements also, you always hear them how to take on the BJP. But in practice, if you look at what the regional parties have been doing, you end up thinking that it's the Congress which they are still treating as number one. Congress was their number one enemy in the past, but they are treating the party as the same even today. So look at what has happened today. Today, Luciano Falero, the former Chief Minister of Goa, who is a 7-term MLA, who was in charge of the Congress affairs in the entire Northeast, who is a Gandhi family loyalist. Today he has resigned from the Congress. He is saying that the Mamata Banerjee is somebody who can take on the BJP in Goa. So he has not announced it yet at this point of time, but shortly we may be hearing about this. Falero seems to be heading towards the Trinamool Congress. And it's not the first instance. It's not that Trinamool Congress has taken away one of the Congress's stalwarts in Goa. We saw how in Assam, Susmita Dev defected to the Trinamool Congress. In Tripura, of course, former state Congress President Pradyot Debbarman, he is already in talks with the Trinamool Congress, although we cannot say anything in finality about Debbarman's next move, because he is keeping his options open. But what you see is the Trinamool Congress is trying to expand its footprints in the states where you have this bipolar politics, Congress versus the BJP. And in Bhawanipur Assembly by polls, where Mamata Banerjee is the candidate, just listen to their speeches there. So on the 22nd of September, Mamata Banerjee said, well, we will be going everywhere, Khela Hobe in UP, Khela Hobe in Tripura, Khela Hobe in Assam. Then yesterday, on Sunday, her nephew, Abhishek Banerjee, also declared that we are going to go national and we will be taking on the BJP nationally. And he was not just making a rhetorical point, as is evident from what you have seen today, Falero resigning from the Congress. So what exactly is happening? It's not just the Trinamool Congress. You have seen Aam Aadmi Party. Aam Aadmi Party has been going to every state, right from Uttar Pradesh to Goa to Himachal, Gujarat. And then look at other parties also, like Shiv Sena and NCP. They are in alliance with the Congress in that MVA government in Maharashtra. But both these parties are trying to kind of eat into the Congress's vote bank to grow in that state. Look at the DMK in Tamil Nadu. Now DMK is an alliance partner of the Congress. It's a coalition partner actually in the government. And we saw what the DMK did first in the run-up to the assembly elections. DMK forced the Congress to accept just 25 seats. The offer that was made then to the Congress was that, okay, fine, you settle on 25 seats and we will give you a Rajya Sabha seat whenever there is a vacancy. Now we have seen DMK has not given that seat to the Congress, and there is nothing the Congress can do. And then in Tamil Nadu, again, local body elections are happening. And the Congress guys are cribbing that, we are getting a raw deal from the DMK. So DMK does not really bother about Congress. DMK needed the Congress because it has it has presence in some pockets. But now the DMK is looking to kind of get rid of the ally, or at least treat it in a way as if it didn't matter. So everywhere, look at every state. In UP, for instance, in the last election, you had Akhilesh Yadav going with the Congress. In this election, there is just no talk. So Congress is getting isolated everywhere, and that is happening at a time when Sonia Gandhi is trying to forge a kind of anti-BJP Mahagathbandhan, some kind of grand alliance with other opposition parties. So while she is going for that opposition unity, all the regional parties have their own game plan, and what you see them doing is they are getting into areas where the Congress is the principal opposition force. So why is it happening? In fact, what's happening? What you have seen is, since 98 when Sonia Gandhi became the Congress president, you have seen this effort by the Congress to, this survival tactic, I would say, where the Congress tries to ally with the regional force, and then there it is playing second fiddle to whichever is the regional party, and at the center Congress wants to be or remain the big brother. And that survival tactic is not new. It was not that Sonia Gandhi started it. If you remember, in fact, she seems to be replicating what her mother-in-law Indira Gandhi had done in 71. If you recall, in Tamil Nadu, the Congress was in power till 67. Then it was the Madras state which became Tamil Nadu later. Then in 67, the DMK replaces the Congress as the ruling party. And as you know, in 69, the Congress splits, Kamraj forms another outfit, Indira Gandhi is heading another outfit, and then to survive at the center, what Indira Gandhi did was to enter into an agreement with the DMK that fine, we contest the parliamentary election in alliance, and in exchange, I cede Tamil Nadu to you. So in 1971, Assembly and Lok Sabha elections in Tamil Nadu, in fact, DMK went in an alliance with the Congress in the Lok Sabha election, but the Congress did not contest the Assembly election. And we know what has happened since then. Since then, Congress has been, reduced to a non-player in Tamil Nadu in a way, hitching on one bandwagon or the other. I mean, one of the Dravidian parties it goes with. It has become virtually irrelevant. But that survival tactic that Indira Gandhi had started has become a kind of role model for the Congress in other states. From late 90s onwards, what we have seen how Sonia Gandhi has been doing this. But then things are changing now. I have mentioned it, how regional parties are actually eating into or trying to eat into the Congress's vote bank. In fact, treating it at par with the BJP as enemy number one, or you can say joint enemy number one. Why is it happening? So in my view, there are 5 reasons for this kind of a shift, why regional parties are doing that. First reason is, of course, you have most of these regional parties, I mean, they have their core vote bank, which they kind of got from the Congress. Because many of the parties like NCP, Trinamool Congress, they came out of the Congress and in fact became the repository of that Congress vote bank in those states, say in West Bengal, or even in, say, Andhra Pradesh, TRS or YSRCP. And these parties, their vote banks today are old Congress vote banks. So for them now, there is a question of survival when the BJP is becoming very aggressive in their states. So first of all, because the vote bank is the same, what they would like that, okay, fine, the Congress is ready to play second fiddle, what it is doing to Mamata Banerjee in West Bengal, to YSRCP in Andhra, sorry, not in Andhra, they are not in alliance, to say RJD in Bihar, or with SP in UP, in the last election, I mean. So in every state you see the same combination. Now what has happened, now that BJP is emerging as a major threat, what these parties are looking at is to somehow survive in this transition period also, when BJP is becoming numero uno. So in my last episode of Polygraph, I had discussed this. So I am quoting from an article written by Sanjay Kumar of the Center for the Study of Developing Societies, that's a think tank. And in an article in the Indian Express, he was quoting election studies by CSDS, Lokaniti CSDS in fact. And those studies indicated that since 96, regional parties were pretty dominant earlier. If you look at the last 7 elections, Congress was having, regardless of whether it was in power or not, it was holding a chunk of votes. That trend is shifting now. So, for instance, Congress from 96 onwards, if you look at the next 5 elections until 2009, you would find Congress's vote share somewhere in mid-20s, 25%, 26%, 28%. Which came down to 19.3% in 2014 and 19.5% in 2019. So, Congress still has that 20% vote bank. But it has been more disastrous for the regional parties. Now, if you look at the regional parties' vote share, from 96 onwards, these parties, 96 it was 40 plus, 41% or something, and in the next 5 elections, the regional parties' overall total vote share, somewhere hovered around mid-30s, I would say, 36%, 37%, 35%. In 2014 election, in fact, when the BJP came to power with a clear majority and there was a Modi wave, even then regional parties put together, they secured 39% of the votes. Quite a chunk actually. But in 2019, regional parties' vote share has come down to 26.4%, from 39 to 26.4%. For the Congress again, from mid-20s to a bit less than 20%. For the regional parties, from mid-30s to less than 30%, to in fact mid-20s. And all these votes, there is no question of a debate here. We know where the votes have gone. The BJP has got all these votes from both the regional parties and the Congress. And that is why when I am saying the first reason for these regional parties to kind of take on the Congress first is that they think that fine, they have suffered losses, they have to make up for that. The BJP is very aggressive and there is no way that they are going to eat into the BJP's vote bank at this stage. So Congress is a sitting duck there and Congress's vote bank. So the regional parties are trying to mop up whatever vote bank is left with the Congress. That's first reason or first explanation for what the regional parties are doing today. The second explanation would be for how the Congress is, how regional parties are treating the Congress. There was a time when these regional parties needed the support of the Congress. Don't forget, Congress was numerous, in Indian politics for a long time. So even when regional parties say, when you had this Mandal Kamandal churning in 90s and later, even when Congress lost most of its vote bank, it still had certain core loyal vote bank. So even in Bihar, for instance, when Lalu rule came, Lalu also needed the support of the Congress. So to tell you one story, when Sitaram Kesari was the Congress president, and then we are told that whenever he would go to Bihar to hold rallies, he would just call up Lalu Yadav, and Lalu Yadav would mobilize crowds for him. And Kesari would go address that huge crowd and feel very happy about this. So, but Lalu also needed him, needed Kesari. You have some certain chunk of upper castes who still vote for the Congress. Muslims vote for the Congress, and Lalu needed that. Even when the RJD was in a dominant position, RJD had to keep Congress by its side. Same goes for the SP in UP. So these parties Congress was relevant to these parties up to a point. Today these parties think that they don't need the Congress as such. They are not dependent on the support of the Congress. So you have seen Akhilesh Yadav getting rid of Congress this time. Because last time he had given about 100 seats to the Congress. Congress's strike rate was so bad that it actually pulled down the SP tally. The same happened in the last Bihar election in 2020. Congress demanded too many seats. RJD actually ended up on losing side because one of the factors actually was because it gave away too many seats to the Congress. In West Bengal, Trinamool Congress does not need a Congress. In most of these states, in Maharashtra, probably even today, Congress is relevant. It still has a certain number of, or has influence in certain areas. But then this is where NCP and Shiv Sena are looking to expand, to kind of eat into the Congress's vote bank. And NCP and Shiv Sena may still depend on, or the individually these parties, NCP in particular, may still depend on the Congress to kind of rally around those so-called secular votes that they have. But in most of their states, Congress is becoming irrelevant. And therefore, for these regional parties, there is no reason for them to continue their alliance with the Congress. That's the second reason for the way they are trying to poach Congress leaders or kind of get into the Congress's turf in different states. The third reason I would say, they have lost confidence in the Congress. So earlier, when they had to take on somebody at the center, or what they used to call communal forces, they used to call the BJP at one point of time. So they depended on the Congress to play their politics at the center. So while they had domination in their respective states, at the center they needed a big force like the Congress to take on the BJP. That confidence is gone now because of the bumbling leadership that the Congress has got today. They no longer need the Congress even there at the center to support them. As a matter of fact, today as it is, a dead Congress is better for them because they have something to look forward to. They can build their own vote bank on the ruins of the Congress today. So that's the third reason. Fourth reason I would say, fourth reason is, why should the regional parties work for the revival of the Congress? That's what Congress is looking to do. Ally with regional parties, or try to kind of, regain your lost ground, hoping that sooner or later you will have certain, or you will have that critical mass for you to kind of try to form the government in those states where you don't have that bipolar politics, say in Bihar or in UP. But for the regional parties, what is there for them to take? See, if Congress is revived in West Bengal, who is there to lose? It will be Mamata Banerjee. If Congress is revived in Bihar, RJD will be one of the losers. So revival of the Congress is as much a threat to these parties as the BJP is a threat to them. Say in Telangana or Andhra Pradesh, TRS or YSRCP, if Congress, if you revive the Congress somehow in Telangana, which party will be at the receiving end? It will be the TRS. It will be the YSRCP in Congress, in Andhra Pradesh. So the Congress's revival does not really suit these regional parties as such. Opportunistic alliance is fine, although in the south these parties are not in alliance, but conceptually I am saying opportunistic alliances are fine. But none of these regional parties would like the Congress to be revived. In fact, it does not suit their interest. And last but not the least, when we are talking about conflicting ambitions of regional satraps, the inherent contradictions in that so-called or incipient opposition unity we have spoken about earlier, conflicting ambitions of different parties, everybody wants to become the prime minister, every regional satrap has the same ambition. So as long as you have a dominant Congress, a Congress which you need to actually realize your ambitions, you will never be there because Congress will not allow you to be there. What you need is a Congress begging for survival, and that suits the interest of all the regional satraps. So these are the 5 reasons I am giving here to explain why the regional parties are going after the Congress more than the BJP. While they are taking on the BJP on their home turfs, they know they are confident enough that they can take on the BJP on their home turfs. Now they are looking out to expand at the cost of the Congress in other states, even while they keep fighting with the BJP. That's all from me in this episode of Politically Correct. Thanks for watching.